Okay. Hey, everybody. It is wonderful to be here with 12,000 people at Korea Blockchain Week's Impact. Wow. This is an exciting conference. We're talking about some of the most important things in digital assets from what is by far and away the center of the universe for the digital asset industry. Joining me today are three of the world experts on stablecoins, which are absolutely 100% the most important thing happening in crypto today. So you guys are all lucky, audience members, for being at the most important panel at the most important conference in crypto right now. So I'm going to let each of my panelists introduce themselves, starting with you.
It's so great to be here, David and panelists. Korea is one of my favorite countries. Seoul is one of my favorite cities to visit. So I'm Jelena. I'm the co-founder CEO of Noble. Noble is a purpose-built stablecoin issuance protocol. We were founded about 3 years ago after Terra's collapse, which I'm sure being in Seoul is familiar to some of you in the room. We can talk about how Noble's principles from that day have evolved to today, where we're seeing this explosion of purpose-built infra for stablecoins. It's a pleasure to be here and excited for the conversation.
Great. Raj?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raj Sandhwani. I run global business development for Binance, and I don't think we need further introduction.
I was going to say, what's Binance again? Sam?
Hey everyone, my name is Sam Kazemian. I'm the CTO of Stable, and I also have a special place in my heart for Korea because before Stable, the first token I was actually a part of was launched in Korea, in Seoul. So Korea has a special place in my heart for sure.
So here we are. It's 2025, and stablecoins essentially have taken over, and we know they have because one of only 3 bills this year passed the U.S. government. That's right. There were only 3 bills passed this year by the U.S. government, and one of them is a crypto bill called the Genius Act. And that's all about crypto stablecoins and creating some sort of guardrails for those. So you know what, Sam? I'm going to nominate you to tell us a little bit about what the Genius Act is for this audience.
Sure. So the Genius Act is a new banking bill from actually the Senate Banking Committee, which, now that we're talking about fun facts, is the first bill out of the Senate Banking Committee in over 8 years. It defines what a payment stablecoin is and how it's regulated and how it should have redemptions and how quickly and who should be the custodians. And essentially, it defines exactly what a legal digital dollar that the United States OCC, the actual federal government, will recognize as a legal stablecoin that can be integrated into banking deposits, payment processors, and everything like the fintech layer, application layer.
So Jelena, what are like some of those basic principles? Like, for example, these stablecoins need to be fully backed. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe taking a step back for a second, what is a stablecoin and why do we need proper collateralization for these stablecoins? So throughout crypto's history, we had the first stablecoin being Tether, the second sort of well-known, but definitely not the second in history, but the well-known being Circle's USDC, and from there we've had many others. And basically throughout that process, we've discovered that full collateralization by a combination of short-term treasury bills and/or cash deposits would be the best way for stablecoins to maintain their peg to the U.S. dollar. Obviously, I mentioned throughout history there have been other failed experiments, I would say, where the peg was not maintained, and you have now the U.S. government basically creating the rules of the road for many other issuers to come to the forefront and basically compete with the Tethers and Circles of the world.
But I mean, there are officially other types of stablecoins that exist, aren't there, Raj? Like, for example, MakerNow Sky developed an over-collateralized stablecoin that used other types of collateral backing, and there's been other algorithmic stablecoins that have been produced before. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the universe of stablecoins that aren't necessarily Genius compliant?
Absolutely. I mean, the whole idea of a stablecoin, right, is simply about having a token that is backed by something that has low volatility, right? And so what do I mean by that? Something that actually, if you look at your bank accounts today, right, those are actually digital dollars that have already been stablecoins, if you think about it, right? Cash, pre the iPhone world, right, was the best definition, right, of a stablecoin, really. Now, in your bank accounts, if you have HSBC or if you have Hana Bank over here, those are stablecoins sitting in a portal, which is your bank account, right? That is already accessible to you. The difference here is that for a lot of normal people, you never got the benefits of holding that cash stable in a certain place. With all these different types of stablecoins that have come out, you can get certain types of benefits, right? So if you look at a company like Athena, right, what they're basically saying is, look, if you keep your cash here, right, and we give you this stable version of it, what we will do is we will share with you, right, a percentage of the yield we generate from certain activities. For other stablecoins, it's we will share with you a certain percentage of the activities or the fees we get from payments, right? Or we will share a certain percentage of the benefits we get from dealing with other.
And some of those have been very popular, but worth noting, sharing the yield, so to speak, with end consumers is not Genius compliant, is it?
Yeah, I'll push back on a little bit of that, because I do think Genius is setting the framework for not just the US, but for every other jurisdiction to kind of follow suit, because you do need safe collateral that is properly managed in real bank accounts. And so as it relates to Genius, obviously you have this very clear distinction in the legislation, which is around yield. So if I'm the issuer, I cannot by default pass on the yield. But I think one of the nuances that people, sometimes kind of identify is, of course, if I'm a distributor, like if I'm Coinbase, I can pass on the yield. So it's not as simple as yield or no yield.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so if I'm going to add a little bit here, is a fun fact is actually back in March, I helped draft part of the actual bill in DC. I'm US-based, and one of the first things when this was being drafted out of the banking committee, they had a large amount of entrepreneurs. They're US-based, the Blockchain Association, Stand With Crypto, everyone give insight. And one of the main things that the Genius Act is trying to do in terms of intent is to delineate between stablecoins that are not hypothecated in any way, which by that we mean stablecoins that are just backed by legally cash equivalent reserves, which the US government has a specific definition for, and stablecoins that do everything else. So for example, you brought up Athena. They do some really interesting carry trade, and they distribute that yield. And then there's others, right, like MakerDAO with the collateralization of CDPs, and the interest rate goes to the holders of USDS, right? The law actually makes no distinction about any of those things. They say that you go ahead and do them, do that at your own risk. But the law defines what is a payment stablecoin that does absolutely nothing else.
Yeah.
And so these would be like Tether, USDC, USD1, and a number of others that have popped up. One of the other things that's now seemingly permissible is that there can be totally new issuers of stablecoins that maybe couldn't do this before, like, for example, banks. Do we see the future where regular banks are issuing stablecoins?
So definitely. So one other thing about Genius, Sam, really cool to know that you helped draft part of that bill, is who can be an issuer. So yes, financial institutions, banks, fintechs, these entities by default can become compliant under Genius. Entities that cannot become compliant kind of by default are big tech companies whose primary business function is not financial in nature. So they can be part of a consortium to issue stablecoins, but they cannot own a majority of a stable.
Feels like an attack on Facebook.
Well, actually, the reason why it's written as such actually goes back to obviously the Libra days, where there was intense scrutiny over big tech basically becoming a bank and having overdue power to close bank accounts. But actually, fun fact, it actually goes even before that, when you had basically banks lobbying to become social media companies. And big tech was like, no, we're not going to basically allow banks to control your social logins and have this kind of...
It would be the most boring social network ever.
Yeah. Well, this was when big tech was like just starting out, right? And social media was just becoming a big thing. And banks were like, well, we want a piece of the pie. We want to become, social media companies, and we want to be able to not only control your access to your finances, but also to your social profile. So anyways.
So that's where it started.
Yeah, back like 10 years or...
Okay, so let's go back to today just for a moment, because I think the history and context is essential. But look how big stablecoins are. Last year, there were more stablecoin transactions. The total transaction volume eclipsed, for stablecoins, Mastercard plus Visa. Is that possible?
Well, not just possible, it happened. right? And actually, when a lot of the work we do with emerging market governments, right, is we basically sit down with them and they're having almost an existential crisis here, right? If you look at most emerging market governments, they have capital controls. They have spent decades protecting the flow of local currency within their economies, right? And when they saw the US wake up one day and suddenly one of the largest holders of US-backed bills, right, is a crypto company, right? And it basically became the best proliferator of US dollars since the oil peg to dollar, right? Or since petrodollar. A lot of these local governments are saying, hey, wait a second. If the US is starting to become friendly to stablecoins, why are we not looking at our local economies and looking at locally issued, locally backed stablecoins as well?
So are you seeing right now that countries are trying to issue their own fiat-backed stablecoins that are not US dollar denominated?
Absolutely.
And I say this because, what is it, something like 95% of all stablecoins today are US dollar denominated.
99.
99.
Yeah.
That's over 95.
Again, right? If you look at most emerging market governments, right, and most emerging market banks, you can't even get access to a US dollar bank account. But in today's world, you can download an app and suddenly have USDT. So most of their citizens, at least from a theoretical perspective, now have dollar access without actually it being regulated in that country, without it being provided by secure, safe operating rails. So they, again, are starting to wake up to this fact where the US government is saying, hey, look, we're happy with the world using dollar-backed stablecoins, but all of these other local economies are going to say, hey, well, actually, why are we letting our citizens bypass our local currencies, right, and move straight to the dollar?
Look, it's fair. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily, if I were a non-US country, want to go and have all my citizens using US dollars, but at the same time, it is great, Sam, for the US dollar to have this enormous support of commercial purchasers of US treasuries.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And like Secretary Scott Bessent says in his estimations, about 3 trillion supply of Genius-compatible stablecoins he expects to see by 2030. Now,
and we're at fewer than 300 billion in total stablecoins today, no?
Yeah, that's at least a 10x just in the next 5 years. But what I find really interesting is actually what I feel like the mix of those will be, right? Which is there's probably going to be a hyper stablecoinized world of branded stablecoins and like Starbucks USD, Walmart USD, and all of these things. But there will be a short list of stablecoins that are money, like USDT, like USDC, and these stablecoins are the things that every other stablecoin will come in and out of, because you're not going to buy something from Walmart with Starbucks USD. You're not going to buy your coffee with Walmart USD. You're going to do it with Starbucks USD, for example, right? And so these are more similar to tokenized gift cards, as I like to think about them. And the most important thing to think about is which are the stablecoins that are more like money, and what are they doing, right? And that's why the biggest stablecoins like USDT are working with specialized chains, right? And USDC is working with specialized chains.
I wanted to ask about that. So, of course, the very first stablecoin, Tether, started on Ethereum. And then it switched over to Algorand, and then we started to see, no, that was USDC, I should say, that did Algo. But we started to see it proliferate on other blockchains. And right now, for example, on TRX, we see a lot of the USDT. That's the way it currently stands. We see, in fact, kind of silos of stablecoin liquidity. So my first question, before we even get into these focused focused chains, is there an issue with having stablecoins across many different blockchains? Is this a problem?
Yeah, both Circle and Tether and other issuers have this multi-chain strategy where they want to natively deploy across a number of protocols where there is applications trying to source stablecoin liquidity. And obviously, in the case of Tether, they have outsized supply on Tron. For USDC, you can also make the same sort of comparisons. But basically, this is also where Noble's journey comes in. We were basically built to solve for this multi-chain fragmentation across specifically the Cosmos ecosystem, right? So very early days, there was this, clear sign that blockchains would become fragmented, that developers would want their own dedicated execution environments to build the next Hyperliquid. And if you have this fragmentation of liquidity, you're going to need seamless access to native stablecoins without having to strike a deal with Circle or Tether to sort of get that native issuance. And so, yes, I actually think it's the very early days of fragmentation across many distinct purpose-built chains. And I actually think what's going to happen is we will eventually see concentration among a handful of protocols. I don't know if that'll be 10 or 20, but you'll inevitably also have fragmentation, to Sam's point, around different stablecoin use cases, right? Whether that's something on the loyalty side, on the B2B payment side, B2C. I mean, it's a huge, huge list, and you're going to need that purpose-built infra for those use cases to take off.
And some of this purpose-built infra could be as simple as making things much cheaper. No, Sam?
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, that's what I think the biggest stablecoins like USDT and USDC need is they're going to be the ones used for payments, FX, in between. We were talking about different kinds of national currencies as stablecoins. So like we're here in Korea, right? So if you have, let's say, a Korean won token or stablecoin, what USD are you going to go in and out of, and how cheaply can you actually go in and out of it on chain? And that's like one of the things, for example, Stable is working on, right? And there's specialized payment chains that want to do zero transaction fees with their specialized stablecoin partner, right? And so there's going to be a lot of those, and then also things like Noble that solve the interoperability problem with a large issuer like USDC.
So Raj, is this a threat to Visa and Mastercard when it comes to payments? I mean, zero fee, instantaneous transactions that operate seamlessly across lots of protocols. Sounds like a heck of a solution.
You know, it's funny. We kind of have this theoretical argument all the time, right? Where, will stablecoins disrupt the big banks? Will they disrupt payment providers? Will they disrupt, SWIFT even, right? And if you look at all of these big firms, I think what's happening beneath or under the radar is they're actually becoming a lot of the settlement mechanisms for this too, right? Like if you look at how a lot of the on-ramp and off-ramp happens in emerging markets, a lot of people are still using Visa and Master to on- and off-ramp into stables, right? And the name of the game is not which chain you're using, which platform you're using, even the use case. The name of the game is distribution. Right? And these guys have built one of the largest distribution networks in the planet.
And
right?
they've built a heck of a lot of trust.
We know that as well, right? You can argue that Binance is the largest distribution platform, right, that has been built in a while, right? And we did it in under 8 years. So really what's going to happen is, regardless of use case, the reason why a Starbucks stablecoin can exist is because Starbucks has the distribution platform. Visa and MasterCard have distribution. That is very, very difficult to build for any player that comes.
Not to mention millions of us have Starbucks apps that are effectively digital wallets on our phones already.
Exactly.
But I think you just answered the question. Merchants and the distributors of these, goods and services all around the world will actually dictate how they want their payments to be processed. I was just buying a shirt at a store here in Seoul, and they said if you don't use a credit card, you'll get 10% off. Like the incentives are there.
10% off?
Or 5%. The incentives, 5 to 10%.
I would take that deal.
Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't have cash. How am I going to get cash? And if I get cash from my Canadian bank account, that's going to cost me money on the Forex. So it actually doesn't make sense for me. But for the merchant, you bet it does.
All right, well, it sounds to me like stablecoins were just the very beginning. Can't wait to check in again next year to hear what the numbers are then. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Sam, for moderating such a great session.